it is no secret that the world we live in is a rather depressing place to be. And as my job being an entertainer and your humble host of this glorious mansion of ours, my job is to make those days just a little bit better. Except for today, because I've decided that we're going to watch something to remind ourselves that no matter how bad, how low down, how downtrodden we think we are, there's always primary examples out there of people that are slightly more deranged, slightly more unhinged, and ever more doomed than we are. And even in the knowledge knowing that the world is a completely and utterly bucked place, we, at the very least, being the age that we are, when the rest of the world is dealing with the nonsense we're seeing coming out in this generation with TikTok adult children, will be long and buried when they're dealing with the repercussions of the world. And we're going to watch something that helps us realize that. So if you want to get a little bit annoyed and a little bit of internal spite exhumed, enjoy this video. Now, I know this isn't exactly the normal kind of stuff we watch, but sometimes it's just nice to watch something a bit more real, to be reminded that no matter how distraught and diabolically brain dead we might be, we're at least not as brain dead and as effed up as the future generation is going to be. Like I said at the beginning, when we're long buried, these people that we're going to see in this video are the ones going to be dealing with the problems of the world. So let's at least bask in the glory of knowing that at least they're not going to be our problem when they are their own problem.
We cannot raise a generation.
I always feel like we're going into that movie where the entire world is just filled with idiots. What was that movie called again? Idiocracy, I think?
Still performing on the fourth
we are literally heading into a universe of idiocracy.
Meltdowns after taking the iPad away from them.
What's wrong?
I wanna play Fortnite! Deadass, you know that we are in a doomed generation when kids' first words that they say isn't mummy or daddy, but iPad. And listen, this is not going to be the video where I sit here and explain why this is bad, because then we all know it's just lazy-ass parents that can't be bothered to teach their kids. That's the summary of it. Don't let your kids be brought up by tablets. They can be a complimentary thing and a reward, but don't let that be the thing that brings your parents up.
As a 12-year-old, the internet taught me too many things I shouldn't know. It has completely ruined me, and I have serious mental health issues. This is just one of the many horror stories about brain.
Dude, even in my lifespan, when I was a kid, when I was 12, the only thing I had to worry about was how I was going to get mud out of my school shoes. Nowadays, 12-year-olds are worrying about their mental health. Holy!
Rot destroying Generation Alpha. It's gotten so bad that the Oxford Dictionary made brain rot the 2024 word of the year. But although everyone is complaining about brain rot, most people still don't understand what it is exactly or how much damage it's causing. Today, we'll break it down like never before and show with proof how brain rot is destroying and—
So like, this is more of a problem of the generation we're in. Technology has become so ingrained in our society that we have almost like a reliance on it. But the problem is we have a reliance on technology, but we don't have enough tech literacy. It's a problem of literacy, of reliance without enough education on the uses of technology. Because if the population was more educated about the tribes and tribulations of technology, they'd understand the consequences and the issues with it. But because they just see it as this thing, because humans are designed in a way that are just consumerist, they don't understand the consequence of what they get from doing stuff like this, which is where a lot of the issue lies. And especially when you're kids, like kids don't understand consequences. Kids just want to get that dopamine hit. It's why the attention span of kids is so depressingly low these days, because they're given a tablet, they're given a phone, and expect to self-regulate, but they don't, because they don't understand the consequence. And the worst thing is, dude, we're literally living in a time where a lot of kids can't even tell an analog clock. Like, they can't even read an analog clock. We're in a generation where kids don't even know how to use a keyboard. And I'm not even going to remind you of the story that I had when I went to a gaming convention and I saw these kids trying to play a game on one of these computers, and they were touching the screen as if it was a tablet rather than using the keyboard and mouse because they had no idea how to use a keyboard and mouse. And then the person who was at the game that they were playing pulled out a games controller instead, and they still didn't know what to do with it.
entire generation. So my goal this year is to give you guys double the amount of videos without sacrificing quality. And to do that, we got to keep growing. So 75% of you guys aren't subscribed, and it would mean the world to me if you did. And I promise to give you more fire content. The disturbing rise of brain rot.
All right, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Brain rot is the idea that exposure to certain content
we all
can
know,
turn
right?
you into an idiot.
This is what this video is about. We all know, but it's interesting to get it analogized in a succinct way.
Based on the belief that the internet is rotting the brains of kids who spend too much time watching videos online.
You know what the worst bit about this video is?
Rotting the brains of...
You wanna know what the worst part about this is? The parents are just recording it. That kid has a toy next to them, a phone in one hand, Minecraft in their lap, and the TV is probably running as well. And rather than doing anything, the absolutely diabolical thing is the parents are just filming it rather than stopping it.
Kids who spend too much time watching videos online.
Gen Alpha content's some of the most incoherent brain dead
skibbity toilet
in my life, okay? Like, I can physically feel my brain cells frying every second I spend watching them.
But this isn't just some...
Like, no word of a lie, I was almost tempted to start putting, like, Subway Surfers and those, like, little ADHD, satiations that people... Because, like, it's literally at that stage now. Like, one of these YouTubers I watch, Pyrocynical, in his shorts, he actually has to unironically have, like, Subway Surfers or Counter-Strike Surfers or, like, some other ADHD-inducing, like, Minecraft parkour in the background of the video. Because otherwise people click off. Because that's how, like, attention-addled people are. Literally, like, we're at a stage now where if I make a short, I probably have to put, like, jingly keys in there to keep people's attention.
Theory. A mom saw it happen to her own sons. When the boys were toddlers, she would play videos on her iPad to keep them calm and entertained. It worked so well that she started calling the iPad Peace in a Pocket.
Sometimes you have an important phone call or you've got a parent-teacher interview or whatever.
Like, I'm not against giving kids iPads. I think it just requires responsibility and moderation. Like anything. Like, back in the day, it was a similar thing as, like, Game Boys or, you know, being allowed out to go play with friends or playing with toys. You have to actually be a parent. You have to keep kids limitations and restrictions. They have to earn the iPad. If you just let them have it at all times, they don't understand consequence. They don't understand the meaning behind it. They have to value what they're given. And if they have it at all times, they have no value for it because it's something they have all the time. Like, if they have it taken away, they understand it's a reward and they will feel more like they've earned that and they see it as a reward rather than something they're entitled to.
You just can't be interrupted and it's so easy. It's peace in a pocket.
But that peace didn't last.
That is literally laziness.
By the time her sons were 9 and 7, they were exhibiting disturbing behavior. The boys didn't want to do anything except watch videos online and play games. They didn't even want to go to school or do homework. And when she tried to take the screens away...
So, I saw this firsthand, and I'm not going to call them out, but my ex's sister was a single mother of 3 children at the time. And, you know, being a single mother's hard, and I get it. You need help. But I find it to be immensely irresponsible to let your tablet do the parenting for you. If you have kids, it is a responsibility of a parent to be a parent. And again, I am not against giving kids tablets or games or whatever. Like, back in the day, I had a Game Boy. But I would only be allowed to play my Game Boy after I'd done my homework, after I'd done some chores, or at certain times in the evening. Because that gave me something to look forward to, and it meant I was incentivized to do productive things and be helpful and do actual, you know, kid things, and then saw the tree as my reward. It gave me a value to it. It meant that I valued the time I had with that thing. Because if I had the Game Boy at all times, I'd feel entitled to it.
This happened.
And they would become sort of aggressive and throw tantrums and that sort of thing if they'd played for ages and ages.
She ended her story with a warning for other parents.
There is something about it that changes their brain.
And she was absolutely right.
This is what I mean by a lack of tech literacy. You don't understand the technology You see it as for a luxury and a novelty, and you give access to something that you don't understand. It's the problem of the world we live in at the moment, is that there's not enough education towards the technology we have. When I was in school, when I was in primary school, we had maybe 20 computers to a school of 1,000. And we would be given time allocation slots to learn how to use the computer. But that meant at least we understood what it was about. Whereas now, it's very much you're just given one because it's considered the cultural norm. And because of that, there's no need to learn because it's just so ingrained in what we do on a day-by-day basis. And unfortunately, it's I would say it's like an endemic sign of generational dissonance, where we, rather than having an education system that's kept up with technology, the technology has developed, but the education system is still stuck in the 90s. That's where the issue lies.
Researchers found that too much screen time physically changes kids' brains.
One result that keeps showing up, parts of the
And yeah,
brain
like, the
related to
tablet is
reading,
definitely a cause of the
language,
issue,
and
but the
decision-making
problem is
are
the
often
parent. It
weaker in
always comes
kids
back to the
who have
parent.
more screen
The
time.
parents need to be responsible. You have to be a parent. And I get it. Life's hard. You know, times are hard. You don't have much time to do that kind of stuff. But you have to set your expectations based on what you're willing to do. And if you're not willing to do the parenting, then you shouldn't have had the responsibility of being a parent to begin with.
This shrinking of the brain is what we call brain rot. And by the time parents notice, it's already too late.
What's wrong?
You know, actually, I have a really good example of this kind of thing that happened to an adult. And I know this because it's me. And it wasn't because of iPads or anything. It's because I streamed. For the last 5 years, this was what I was dealing with. I had become so ingrained in doing my streams and being exposed to the internet. I barely, like, prior to 2 years ago, I barely went outside. I barely socialized. For almost 5 years, my only existence was waking up, streaming, YouTube videos, artwork, sleep, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And by the end of those 5 years, I was brain fogged. I was socially reclused. I had no social skills. I was immensely angsty all the time. I felt very...
Wait, did you know that we have a Discord and a Twitch? No? Well, now you do. So what are you waiting for? Why don't you click those little links over there and be part of the fun? Just like the rest of us cool kids, you know what I'm saying?
Awkward about myself. And what changed that was when I started doing things for myself. I started taking proactive steps to try and better myself. I started going to the gym. I started teaching myself programming, music. I started trying to learn things. And doing that made me realize how rotted my brain had become. I can feel that on a tangible level. I can resemble that remark. It's true, and it happens to more than just kids. The problem is, the reason why it's more problematic with kids is because they're developing. Their brains are more susceptible to this kind of stuff. Anyone can be brain rotted, but it's important that kids develop their brains at a young age and they're allowed to be kids before the dullery of adulthood kind of sets in on them. Because what happens as a kid is what formulates them for their future.
One mom shared a story about her 7-year-old daughter who got an iPad for Christmas. No one realized how addicted this girl was until her birthday party. The house was full of guests, presents, and cake, but none of it mattered. The girl did not talk to any children invited and spent the entire party playing
so
Roblox
depressing.
on her iPad. Generation Alpha is defined as those born
That's
from
the thing as well,
2010
right?
to 2024.
Honey, you've got kids around to socialize, but I'm socializing with the people in my iPad.
That's why they've been hit the hardest by brain rot.
She knew exactly how to start it up. She knew from the get-go.
From the moment she wakes up, Violet Bolton can't wait to get on her iPad.
There are about 2 billion Gen Alphas living.
And you want to know what? That's a drug. These kids are getting the equivalent of adulthood drug addiction at the age of 2. They are being chemically addicted to their tablets in the same way that people get addicted to drugs. That's the real fucked up part there.
In the world. What happens when these brain rot kids step into the real world? iPad kids. Studies show that kids who spend too much time online are more defiant and rude to their parents. A perfect example of this happened on a flight from Germany in August 2017. A mother and her child boarded the plane, and right away, you could tell this was an iPad kid. The moment they sat down, the mother asked the flight attendant to turn on the Wi-Fi so her child could use their iPad. We don't know if the Wi-Fi was turned on or not, but as soon as the plane took off, all hell broke loose.
The passengers describe an 8-hour flight from hell with
God. And that's the issue. It's all well and good if you, like, you know, for the times that you have the tablet, your kid's gonna be placated and adjusted. But holy shit, dude, the second they leave that little bubble they create for themselves, they have to deal with the real world. And because they've spent their entire childhood stuck inside their little virtual bubble, of course they're not gonna know how to deal with the real world because they've never been in the real world. This is equal parts. This is 90% of the issue with the parent. Like, I get it. Having a tablet is great, but when you've let the tablet raise your child, and not even raise them, distract your child, you haven't raised that kid. Their only experience of life is what they've seen on the tablet. So when they have to deal with the real world because it's not what it's like in their tablet, of course they're going to lose their shit.
Nerve-jangling screaming and fussing. They even covered their ears to drown out the 3-year-old.
No matter what anyone did, the child wouldn't calm down.
But he was climbing all over the chairs. He was just screaming, would not let up. He was running up and down the aisles.
Some people say the solution is simple.
What were parents doing at this point? Not need to hell?
Punish the kid, spank them, take away their devices. But what happens when the kid
we are not
isn't
getting into the
small
conversation
anymore?
about
Like
physical
this
corporal
15-year-old
punishment.
Gen Alpha boy who is 6 feet tall and 270 pounds. In September 2022, his mom allegedly took away his phone as punishment. In retaliation, he destroyed the entire house.
So let's not pretend that disobedient kids is something new. Like, it's always been something that happens. The problem is, it's way worse now. There's much more problematic tendencies for kids because kids that are, like, this is a generational problem. This is what happens when you have a society that is coddled, when there's too much abundance. In generations past, this was never so much of an issue because, especially in like the 90s, the early 1900s, life was hard. You know, you didn't have much. You didn't have indulgence. You worked hard. You went out. You didn't really have chance to do much social stuff. And when you did have time off work, you would value that because you would go out and do stuff. And because life was harder, you didn't have that. You really valued the good stuff. You valued the times where you weren't working. You had much more merit towards enjoying those times you weren't working. The problem is, nowadays, you're given everything. There's no real struggle for anything. You're not really fighting for anything. When you are spoiled, when you are given everything like this, it's the sentiment I said earlier. You have no value. You have no real, like, you don't feel like you have the value to anything you own because you didn't work for it. And when you have, like, the reason, like, again, there's always been disobedience. It's just when you're not challenged, when you're not fighting for what you're earning, when you're just given everything, you don't value it because it was just given to you. And that's the problem with a lot of kids these days, is they don't learn the value of things early because they never have to work for it. Because most parents in this day and age, there's two issues where this happens. One, it's parents that were not given anything when they were kids. And they were saying to themselves, okay, but I want my kids to have everything. Good sentiment, but only in the right execution. And secondly, it's the parents that don't have the time to raise kids, but they have kids anyway out of obligation. In an ideal world, you should only have kids if you are qualified to do so. Just because you can have kids does not mean you should. Not everyone has the ability and the mental maturity to do so.
Desperate for help, his mother started a GoFundMe to raise money for repairs. But when people started criticizing her son for being spoiled, she tried to change the story. She posted another video saying her son was mentally ill and that his meltdown wasn't over a phone, but the internet wasn't buying it. They thought she was only saying that so more people...
And that's a whole different subject about entitlement. Ugh. The level of narcissism and self-indulgence in this universe, it just absolutely befuddles me. Like, this is why I'm glad that I, at least in myself, I know that I'm never gonna be this bad. But whenever I see shit like this, I lose a little bit of faith in humanity.
People could feel sorry for her and donate. But this kind of aggression from kids is everywhere now, even in schools.
I've had a student throw chairs at me and shoes.
There was a video I saw which was the true depiction of this problem. A kid was in school, and he had his Switch taken away from him in lesson. Because, you know, you're in school, you're there to learn and get educated. So the rational thing to do would be like, oh, sorry, miss, I'll pay attention to class. No. This kid got up out of his seat and knocked out the teacher.
Because I asked them to get their math book out, but they didn't want to.
And nothing triggers aggression faster
part of that is definitely the issue of the school of allowing those things in school to begin with.
What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen?
People have been sharing videos.
This is just literally the issue of when this is gonna make me sound like such a millennial. When I was in school, we had mobile phones and everything, but the access to the internet and technology wasn't as easy. Technology hadn't developed that much at that stage. So we didn't have to worry about that because there just wasn't enough access to it. Whereas now, technology is so fundamentally part of our society, but it's become fundamentally this accessible, but the understanding and the responsibility around it is not there. The education around it isn't there. Technology has developed, but society hasn't. That's the issue.
Their children literally having meltdowns after taking the iPad away from them. I mean, this one is literally picking up a chair to throw it.
But Gen Alpha kids who aren't lashing out are facing a different emotional problem: depression. In 2021, researchers found that high school kids who spend too much time on TikTok experience memory loss, depression, stress, and anxiety. Sometimes
that's called
even
your
healthy
dopamine receptors being burnt the fuck out because you have zero attention span.
Just because they saw it on TikTok.
Important story for parents to hear. Rise in teens on TikTok self-diagnosing themselves with rare mental health disorders, in most cases that they don't have, after watching videos on the social platform.
But it doesn't stop at wrong diagnosis.
God, and that's the worst part as well.
Teens actually
that is literally just getting brought
symptoms.
up on TikTok.
Teenage girls showing up at their doctor's office with these strange tics, these strange movements, jerking movements. Nobody could figure out why.
Doctors were baffled. It took a team of investigative reporters to solve the mystery.
And again, technology had improved, but medicine, science, psychology, social studies hadn't evolved with it. If the education system and governmental systems were aware and did their diligence, they would have seen this kind of stuff coming. But obviously there are other problems and they weren't willing to put the time in. And now we're dealing with what happens when you have a society that's not been educated enough on things that are psychologically and environmentally affecting them.
According to a recent Wall Street Journal article, doctors say all the girls have one thing in common. They're watching TikTok videos of people with Tourette's syndrome, which is a neurological disorder that can cause physical tics.
No wonder TikTok is called the worst social media platform of all. It's pure brain rot. This next brain rot problem destroys the innocence of kids. Inappropriate content for kids. Kids who spend all their time online don't have...
No surprise. I mean, you can get filters, sure, but ready access to the internet no matter how many good filters you have, dude, even when I was in high school, we had like firewalls at our school, and even with those on, people still found out ways to get into porn websites. And I remember dead ass. There was one time when I was in high school, little Jimmy was sat inside of the art class where they had 3 computers at the back, and the teacher was trying to teach something at the front of the class, and the next thing we hear is, no, oh my God, at the back of the room. Jimmy had accidentally, was casually watching porn midway through the class with the audio on.
To go looking for adult content. It finds them. First, they stumble upon viral memes
Oh God, and don't even get me started on YouTube's hypocrisy. Like, you can dead ass just find porn on YouTube. There is so much inappropriate shit on YouTube, sorry. Don't even get me started on the Elsa Gate nonsense. All that stuff that's like masked as kids content, but then is basically softcore porn.
That might be funny for an adult, but can be extremely harmful for a child. For example, there are plenty of instances of children quoting the Haktua meme without understanding what it means. There's even a children's song about Haktua that stayed up on YouTube Kids for 3 days. We've also seen kids making jokes about P. Diddy and baby oil. That's not...
This is what happens when you let AI write all your stories. Hey, ChatGPT, how do I make a functional YouTube channel?
Something a child should know about, but inappropriate jokes are just the beginning. Once a kid falls into toxic content, it only...
Something that's not said here that needs to be is it's also regional. It's social. It's a lot of these companies that make this content aren't from the Western audience. These are from Eastern countries like India, to the Philippines, that don't have the same social structure as like Europe, America, that don't have that cultural norm, so they don't have the same standards. To them, they're just doing that because they can make money out of the gullibility of the Western audience. To them, they don't give a crap. They're just trying to make money. And they don't have that same sense of like, what's the word? Tabooness to it. Because they don't see the problem because they're not dealing with the problem.
It gets worse. Some as young as 9 are addicted to mature videos. Others watch real-life gore and fetish content, and this exposure changes them. They start talking and acting differently. Some get so edgy they want to get...
And I realize the irony of saying this considering I'm a VTuber and everything. They find all this adult content, and yet we in the West think that we're privy to that? Dude, whether it's from that nonsense or this nonsense, they find something somewhere or another, whether it's that kind of bullshit from other countries or Twitch, and they stumble upon VTubers or whatever else. But again, that then boils back down to the parents. Where are the parents? The parents need to be educating their the parents need to be educated so they can educate their kids.
Physical with the cops.
Thank you for the tenor, by the way, Godzilla.
Y'all know what? Y'all know what? The police, the Freemasons suck my...
Although TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter try to filter the worst content, kids still find it because they're always online. Before we explain the next way brain rot is destroying Generation Alpha, there's one question we need to answer. If brain rot content is so bad, why do creators keep making it?
I think we're going to get to a stage where after Gen Alpha, we're going to get Gen Brain Rot.
Brain rot isn't just about too much screen.
The joke that I made at the beginning of the stream about heading towards an actual, like, if you've ever seen the movie Idiocracy, it is a movie about where a man is kind of frozen in time and he wakes up from a coma in like the 2100s or something. And the entirety of the world is just completely brain rotted. Everyone's IQ is in the pan, and this person who was considered very average in our time is considered a genius in that time. And it was meant as a parody. It was meant as satire. And yet, as time is going by, it's becoming less and less satire and more real.
Screen time. It's also about the fast, flashy content kids watch online that messes with their brains.
You can use it in 2 ways. You could say, that's brain rot. Yes. Or you can say, that video gave me brain rot. 2 ways.
While brain rot content is destroying Gen Alpha, it's making those creating it filthy rich.
Yep,
let's look at the numbers.
Right it is.
Starting with one of the worst offenders, Coco Melon.
Oh God, no. Okay, this is what I mean. This is the bullshit I mean. And with the influx of AI, brain rot, predatory, and slop content like this is becoming more and more prolific. Because the access to being able to create this medium, if you ever want to see the true depiction of brain rot, go and look up these channels that are basically kids, like child-friendly channels made with nothing but AI. The trouble is, to kids, they don't know the difference. Kids, like, I remember I went round my ex's house one day, and I saw their kids watching kids TV, and I said to myself, damn, this stuff looks terrible by comparison to the kids shows I had when I was a kid. But the thing is, kids don't care. Kids don't, like, to me, I was holding it to my standards, right? I was like, this looks terrible. The graphics are awful. It's like baby talk. But to the kids, they just, like, to them, it's just colors and shapes and flashy lights and whatever. And it's the same problem with this kind of stuff. These kids are going to look at this content. They don't know it's AI. They don't know it's generated. They don't even understand that concept. To them, it's just flashy colors, haha, funny dog kind of thing. And they don't care. They're just going to consume it because it activates their dopamine receptors.
Right now, CoComelon's YouTube channel has 189 million subscribers and 1,400 videos. And those videos have been watched 196 billion times. And every single one of those views puts money in their pockets. However, their biggest payday came in 2021 when the studio behind CoComelon was sold for $3 billion. But CoComelon isn't the only show cashing in on brain rot. According to Forbes, the Baby Shark dance video earns around $283,000 each month. That's about $9,400 a day. We can't talk about brain rot shows without Skibidi Toilet.
Okay, in Skibidi Toilet's defense, Skibidi Toilet is just the prime example. There's always been a Skibidi Toilet. Skibidi Toilet was just the perfect storm of becoming accessible and consumable. Like, there's always been something as cringe as Skibidi Toilet. You need only look at Team Fortress 2 Machinima, anything from the Gmod community, things like Dust Shit, things like Defuck Boom, anything that, like, a lot of these, like, very cringy Machinima Gmod videos, they've always existed. Even as far back as the 1900s, there's always been bottom-of-the-barrel humor media to consume. The problem is, Skibidi Toilet came in at the perfect time, hit with the perfect level of brain rot, right when TikTok was really picking off during lockdown, when everybody had access to the internet.
It's a nonsensical YouTube series about toilets with human heads in the bowls, but it gets over 30 million views per video and could earn up to $23 million per year from YouTube alone. But it's not just videos. Even social media platforms are worsening brain rot by making their apps more addictive. Scrolling on TikTok has been compared to playing a slot machine in a...
This is very much the world we live in, where the food we eat, the media we consume, is designed to placate the masses. And this isn't like a speculation. This isn't me doing like conspiracy theories. This is just the way our society is. What makes life easier for the people who run things is when we are placated and do as we're told. They make things, it's like food being easier to consume. The entire mentality is think less, be placated, and just do as told. That is the world we live in.
Every short video gives a tiny hint of dopamine, making users more addicted. Now, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram are copying TikTok, pushing short videos to keep people hooked. And it's paying off. Here's a table showing how much social media platforms earn in 2024. It ranges from $800 million to $80 billion. Despite the warnings, nobody is stopping. If anything, they're doubling down because brain rot is a gold mine. This next problem is serious because it affects Gen Alpha's daily life. A generation that...
So really, can this be fixed? Yes. Will it be fixed? No. It is not too late to fix this. The problem is, it's not profitable to be fixed. In order to start change for this, there needs to be a societal shift. Which, unless we... Like, this starts being bridged into way too much of a political conversation, and I don't particularly want to have that. But this needs to change from a foundational level that exists beyond technology. There's a responsibility by people in charge to need to treat humans more humans rather than as cattle.
Can't communicate. Watch this video and see if you understand what this kid is saying.
Diddities and diddy men. Keep your phantom high, but Sigma's higher. And remember, it's just alcohol.
Sounds like complete nonsense. That's right, but believe it or not, this is how many Gen Alpha kids talk now. It's called brain rot slang.
I do a GRWM for my OOTD, but I don't have the proper ring like they tell me I need.
I mean, that's not really that bad. I mean, for Christ's sake, dude, when I was in high school, this is back when, like, internet humor was just starting to kick off, there would be kids walking around going, lol, ruffle, you know, using text speech in their regular dialogue. Like, that just happens. I don't think that's a problem. Is it cringe? Oh, hell yeah! It's really cringe. I friggin' vomit every time I hear someone talking like that.
Slang only makes sense if you're deep into online culture.
No,
Otherwise, it's gibberish. It's so frustrating that a TV show host brought her own Gen Alpha son on live television just to explain this bizarre way of speaking.
When you say skibbity toilet, what are you talking about? Are you just talking about that, or is it just a funny thing to say?
Look, guys, it's funny. The boomers don't understand millennial talk. See, as a millennial, I was born at the perfect time. Because I'm not old enough to be out of touch, but I'm young enough to understand what the Gen Alphas are saying. I am, in fact, hip with the skibbity.
Every brain rot word has a meaning. Riz is short for charisma, only in Ohio refers to anything that's strange or random. And skibbity can mean good, cool, bad, evil, or dumb, depending on the context. There are so many of these terms that someone started a brain rot dictionary to keep track. But brain rot slang is not a laughing matter. Many teachers have noticed that kids who speak brain rot
that's not, I mean, yeah, I guess, but that's not really, like, I know what they're going to talk about, but that's not their slang that's the problem. It's the overexposure that's the problem. They're only talking that way because of the exposure. This is what I'm saying when things need to be changed from a foundational level rather than dealing with the surface level problem.
Struggle to switch back to normal English. It's like they're forgetting how to talk properly, but at least teenagers can still talk. Toddlers, on the other hand, are losing their ability to speak at all. My mother shared her experience with Cocomelon, one of the worst.
So this is like a really funky thing. At all ages, humans are designed to mimic their surroundings. When we are kids, the way we learn how to speak and the way we develop our linguistic skills and our lexicon is by absorbing conversations around us. But that only happens with organic human-to-human conversation. So what's going to happen when a kid is watching a tablet where they're being spoken to rather than watching someone talk to each other? They're not absorbing organic conversation. So if you remove the learning process from such an early stage, of course they're going to develop speech problems. Of course they're not going to develop how to learn how to talk to each other because they've not had that ability to absorb conversation from watching other people. And like literally, one of the ways that that was shown in studies that kids learn is when they are taken out with their parents to the park, to the mall, wherever. You absorb speech study by just being around people. Like, I experienced this myself. Like, that time I mentioned where I went through those 5 years of brain rot, when I was at the end of it, I started going out and I started going out more. I started going back into public, and I realized I'd forgotten how to talk to people properly. And it was only when I started spending more time around other people, watching people talk to each other, did I actually remind myself what it was to actually engage in a conversation.
Brain rot shows. My youngest was watching Cocomelon almost every day, and I just thought he was taking a bit longer with his speech. But after I cut it out, his speech picked up almost instantly. He started saying simple words like mama and dada that he hadn't said before. There's a reason for this. For starters, the scenes in Cocomelon change every 1 to 3 seconds.
1, 2.
Anyone else notice how, like, modern movies have to have so many cuts so quickly? Because if they're not changing scene every 2 seconds, you lose the attention of the attention span. Like, I hate the fact that modern media has to be so fast now because of the problem of the people's attention span. Like, I watched the new Transformers 1 movie. That thing is a blur to me. Like, pacing of movies and TV shows has to be so fucking fast now and spasticated because they know they have to be that way. Otherwise, these attention span adult kids will never pay attention to it.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. To 1.
It's so fast that kids barely have time to process what's happening on screen.
Oh,
Secondly,
God,
the
dude,
colors
even that little snippet gave me a headache. What
in
the hell?
Cocomelon are at maximum saturation, which can overwhelm a child's developing brain. Last but not least, Cocomelon has repetitive songs and high-pitched sounds, all designed to grab and hold a child's focus.
So, this requires there to be some kind of responsibility, and there needs to be some level of authority to hold people accountable. There need to be standards. It's the same problem with a lot of things of this generation. A lot of infrastructural, foundational parts of our society are still set in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 50s even. Look at the music industry. DMCA claims, transformative content. Fucking YouTube is privy to this. A lot of these systems are designed off of philosophies and antiquated legislation that was designed for the 50s and the 60s, but still being used in the modern generation. There needs to be a modernization of legislation to deal with things like this. Because until you hold this is what I mean when I say it has to be done from a foundational level. But because there's no regulation of the foundations of this, this is why these kind of things are constantly being done and gotten away with, because they're not held accountable. There's no standards put in place. You can only enact change when you change the foundations.
All of that is happening simultaneously. The child is being overstimulated.
And that overstimulation comes with consequences.
Instead of the child singing along or...
And there's a big issue here. We are not incentivized to fight this. As a society, we are broke. We are so desperate to try and maintain relevancy, to try and be accepted by other people. We are psychologically conditioned to not want to fight this. Because we want to be loved, we want to be accepted, we want money. And the way we get those things is by going along with all of this. Like, if I really wanted to, I could make this kind of content and make twice as much money as I am now. And because I don't. Thank God I have enough stability in my life that I don't need to. But I could. And it's the same thing with regular society. They're not encouraged to fight this because if they do, they won't make money. They won't be accepted. They won't get recognition. That's the problem.
Rehearsing the lessons in the show, they are just mesmerized by what is happening. All of the...
That was something I noticed as well. And this is why I think that, like, a lot of modern kids' TV is just garbage. I remember when I was a kid, I would watch things like Fireman Sam, Postman Pat. There was a level of childishness to them, absolutely. But there was usually a message to every episode. Need I give you the example of The Simpsons? In the early 2000s and the early seasons of The Simpsons, there was a message, there was a metaphor, there was something to be learned from every episode. But then it just became noise. It became, there was nothing learned, nothing gained. It all had to end up being back to the beginning again by the end of the episode. And I watch like a lot of kids shows these days as an educational thing. You don't get anything. It's too quick. You cannot absorb that information. But now these kids shows aren't being made to teach something. They'll sit there surreptitiously saying, oh yeah, they're learning how to scrub their hands. But you can't possibly take that information in when it's going that fast. They're not designing it to teach you something. They're designing to keep you hooked for numbers. And like, I know not all of it's like this. You still get good TV shows. You still get good kids shows. But where most people are taking in their information is from things like this. And I don't think the quality of the shows is worse. I think the substance is worse. Kids shows when I was a kid, They were slow paced. They made sure you understood. And the thing is, they didn't hold your hand. They weren't afraid to handle serious topics. They weren't afraid to be a bit more in your face with things. They weren't afraid to challenge the kid. Like, a lot of the kids shows I remember as a kid were the ones that made me think. These don't want you to think, they want you to consume. That's the issue.
Different senses that are being stimulated in the moment of watching, and it actually causes them to become nonverbal.
It's a national crisis. A 2023 survey found that 1 in 5 children were behind with their talking and understanding of words. That's the highest number.
You want to know something? Some fun thing? In England, when we had lockdown from COVID, the average speech level of kids between 2 and 5 in England receded by 50% because they didn't have the ability to socialize and they didn't have the ability to get educated. But that was because of lockdown. This is the same thing, but with an actual thing instead of a problem. The fact that we are having the same issue from tablets as a national lockdown should show that this is more of a serious problem.
Ever recorded. Talking is how people express themselves. So what happens when an entire generation grows up only knowing how to speak in brain rot? Or worse, what happens when they can't speak at all? Following the cool kids.
And that's the
brain
big
rot
problem.
Has trained Gen Alpha not to think. So in a new...
Best example of this? You ever seen those kids that get bullied in high school because they were a default Andy? Oh, you don't have skins in Fortnite? Bully that kid. Look at the brokey not having skins in Fortnite. This is like such a societal problem of kids developing a social norm that isn't looked at by adults in a way that is serious. There's a difference between that societal shunning versus again, when I'm not saying that my generation was perfect, but we didn't have these problems because it wasn't there at the time. This is a modern problem that requires modern solutions. And the problem is that the people who are looking after these kids don't understand the problem, therefore they can't help with a solution. Shown more dividendly by that video from earlier where the parents like, what is skibbity toilet? They don't understand, so they can't help. And back when I was in high school, you had bullying, you had wanting to be accepted, but it was much more on a foundational level. It was much more based around the person's personality. It was much more based around who they were, not what they were capable of. And the problem with this, where you want to be accepted because of what you wear, what you have, it is a form of societal norms that is being generated by kids who are being educated to put weight and value in things that do not matter, which creates a much more it creates a dissonance of how kids perceive each other's value. And the difference being is that when the bullying that you would have seen when I was a kid from people's looks and personality could be managed through parental intervention. And it was much more notable because it was easy to understand, because it was something that was simple to see. When you've got this level of bullying and this level of acceptance, this level of yearning for acceptance, it's a kind of bullying that it's much more damaging. Because the bullying of the physical, the bullying of the appearance, it's surface level. You grow from that. You move on from that. It doesn't change you as a person. But when you're not accepted because of what you own, this kind of acceptance requires you to change your entire way of being. You want to become like them. It's always been a way. It's always been around in some way or another. But this is a detrimental version of that is much more damaging to someone's psyche and way of being. And it only compounds on the issue of the brain rot from earlier. Like, if you don't have brain rot, you're not a cool kid, essentially.
New TikTok trend goes viral, they don't stop to ask, is this a bad idea? They just jump in, and sometimes it ends in disaster. Take the outlet challenge. Kids were shoving coins into electric sockets just to make sparks fly. Or the devious licks challenge, where kids filmed themselves stealing from their own schools. And those who got caught,
yeah, but this kind of shit happens all the time. I mean, lest we forget about the Tide Pod, the Cinnamon Challenge. There's always been stupid shit that people do for attention, and problem is, it's just like there is a little bit of a sentiment here where this stuff's always existed. It's just the documentation of it is much more apparent now. It's way more easy to see.
Got in trouble.
Friend's been expelled from school for riding his scooter after hours and stealing a handicap parking sign from the school.
And worst of them all, the blackout challenge. That one was fatal. This isn't just about dumb TikTok trends. It's about an entire generation of kids losing their ability to learn.
And that censorship.
Dumb.
A lot of it is just desensitization as well. It's such a mix of everything. Desensitization, bad education, bad foundations, bad oversight, bad parenting. It's so many different things combined together to make a perfect storm of just idiocracy.
Brain rot has messed with Gen Alpha's brains so badly, they can't even study.
We are in a crisis mode in American schools.
On TikTok, videos about Gen Alpha struggling to read have almost 417 million views.
I teach 7th grade, they are still performing on the 4th grade level.
Even the kids who can read can only handle simple sentences or scan headlines. But ask them to read something longer or more complex, they shut.
I mean, it's all well and good calling stuff out, but it's the same thing. It has to start from the foundation. You have to change the perspective of the parents. You have to change the perspective of people in charge and start doing something about the issue. Because it all comes back to money. The government doesn't want to change things because it earns money. And until we change that mindset, what's going to happen is it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse until we have some societal collapse that requires complete change.
Down. And then there's the problem
it's
of
very
low
doomery, it is, but
spans.
They can't even attend to a video. They can't even attend to a 3-minute video clip. I can play it. I can tell them what it's going to be about. I can summarize.
Dude, I remember when I was in high school. You know when they used to wheel out those the only screen we ever used to get in my school when I was in high school. You knew it was going to be a good session when they wheeled out this bad boy. That was the only screen we ever had. We didn't have phones with screens. We had nothing, dude. I didn't even have a mobile phone till I was like 17. So for us, when this came out, but that's the same concept, right? Same concept. Because we didn't have a screen in front of us much, when they did wheel this out, we saw it as a luxury. We valued the time to take a chill session. Like, the lessons that we had this were great because we knew we didn't have to write, we didn't have to read, we had the chance to relax and watch something. And because of that, it gave good value. We valued this when it came out. We wanted to do well and perform well so we could afford having that as a luxury again later.
What the video did, and not a single one can tell me what the video was about.
As if being distracted and unable to read wasn't bad enough, Gen Alpha is also making their teachers' lives miserable.
Having to teach and work with you guys as children.
I feel so sorry for teachers in this day and age. Like, it must be horrible to be a parent in the modern a teacher in the modern generation.
Traumatic experience of my life. They don't respect any authority. You ask them, can you stand in your designated spot?
And again, that comes back to the parents not parenting. Kids learn respect of authority from their parents. If they don't respect the teacher, they probably don't respect their parents either.
Telling you no and shut up.
In 2023, reading and math scores among 13-year-olds in the US fell to their lowest levels in decades. That's solid proof brain rot is destroying the education of an entire generation.
And we are expecting them to go to college and obtain jobs when they cannot even comprehend basic skills.
Brain rot content won't disappear because it's too profitable. But parents can control what their kids watch, and that choice changes everything. More importantly, kids need time away from their screens.
This starts
and if you
with
are Gen
teaching
Alpha and
the
you're
parents.
watching this, here's my advice.
We need
Don't
more
let
education for
brain
the
rot ruin
society as a
your
whole.
future. Visual venture. If you guys like this video, you guys would probably like my video on the worst.
I love this video. I love seeing people who actually take real subjects and put real effort into them. Like this kind of subject, as much as this is not my normal kind of content, I think this is really important to talk about because it is a problem and it is something that's worth understanding. And it's also fun to see just how fucked the future generation is going to be unless some change is made. Anyway, I'm going to leave a link to this in the comments. If you guys would like to check this guy out, he does a lot of this kind of stuff with documentaries of real world problems. Please check it out. Come join our Twitch for the occasional intelligent conversation. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.